White Riot. I think you would love this, right? This is a documentary that it won a documentary award at the London Film Festival last year, back in October. And in fact, I first mentioned it back then. So this is a documentary by Rebecca Shaw about the birth of Rock Against Racism in the 1970s, and it's about how Rock Against Racism was formed and what it was trying to do, and its kind of grassroots, and it leads up to the big gig, the anti-Nazi carnival in Victoria Park in 1978, which you would probably remember, when there was the Clash and Tom Robinson and I think Still Pulse and the documentary, if you were around and listening to music at that time, particularly if you were kind of living in London at that time, it really, really struck a chord because that event was such a big deal. And one of the things the documentary does really well, it's got contemporary interviews and also a wealth of archive footage, is it takes you back to a time in the mid 70s when Eric Clapton got on stage in Birmingham and, obviously not in his best health, just went on this incredibly crazed rant, this lunatic rant that was so outrageous and so racist and so terrible that people started to feel we have to form some kind of grassroots organization. And at the same time, the far right were on the rise in the shape of the National Front, and everything was starting to look very, very grim. Here is a clip.
Extreme racists have become part of balance, an acceptable point of view within the spectrum of political opinions. Can you imagine the media displaying the rhetoric of, say, black revolutionaries?
I hope to achieve, through the ballot box, by getting people elected, first of all, an immediate halt to coloured immigration, and thereafter the phased repatriation of all coloured immigrants, their descendants and dependents, from Britain to their lands of ethnic origin.
And if they don't go?
They're going to go.
What will happen if they don't want to go back? And he said, don't you worry, they're going back. Then we're into cattle trains, and we know what that means. You know what I mean?
So in response to all that, Rock Against Racism was this organisation that was formed to unite black and white youth through music and through raising political awareness. And my memory of it was that it was a genuinely grassroots movement. The documentary follows it from kind of fanzine beginnings to little local groups, ending up in this great big 1978 Victoria Park event. I thought the doc was really great, not least because it got to grips with the organizational complexities of what they were doing. It doesn't shy away from suggesting that this wasn't an easy fight. I mean, there's a lot of interesting discussion, for example, about Jimmy Percy's role, and Jimmy Percy really being somebody who was trying to talk to people who, to some extent, were kind of with whom the National Front already had a foothold. And Jimmy Percy always having this kind of very brave thing about, we need to win over the people that we've lost, not just kind of preach to the converted. Then, you hear stuff about the organization that makes you think it's amazing that any of this stuff ever came together, because it all seemed to be happening on a wing and a prayer. You look at the contemporary footage when it's about this hideous spectre of racism being confronted in the 1970s, and you think we're this many years later, it's terrifying how much of this stuff still rings true. And of course, there are just, there's great stuff about bands that I really, really liked. I have to say, since I watched this documentary, I've been listening on hard rotation to the two Tom Robinson albums, to Power in the Darkness and TRB2. And I haven't listened to those records for a long time. And my word, they're energizing. They are just, that first Tom Robinson Band album, it just comes straight out of the gate, all guns blazing, and it's just, he's on the money. It's terrific. You remember Rock Against Racism, Simon? I mean, you were. This is your time.
I was a student at Warwick at the time, the UK's leading university. But I remember, yes, there were gigs in the university. There were posters up. I didn't go to any of the London demos, but there were certainly lots of events at the at the university.
And it was. But do you have good memories of it? Because I just watching this, it was like it really. I felt excited by it and energized by it, but also kind of exasperated by the fact that it seems terribly relevant today. In fact, I interviewed the filmmakers and I was talking to them about the fact that there is this fact that the spectre of the far right, are very, very present in the current news cycle. But there is just something brilliantly uplifting for me, anyway, about seeing this thing about, no, we're not going to take this. We're not going to put up with this. We're going to do whatever we can. We're going to get all these, scrappy bands together, and we're going to form a movement that says no. And it just appealed to the old lefty in me, and I thought it was really moving. I thought it was terrific.
So where can I see White Riot?
Well, here's the weird thing. So basically, it was going to play a number of festivals over the summer because the festivals aren't happening. So it's now playing a series of virtual festival screenings with Q&As and screenings of the movie. The best thing to do is go to the Modern Films website, and you can see you can find a number of screenings throughout the summer. It's really well worth checking out. I thought it was a really terrific piece of work, very energizing, and with real raw power and conviction, and something to be excited about.